About a year ago, I built a farm. It was quite big. Maybe not the biggest, but there was something that made it one of the kind. Collection system. I can hear some of you asking, okay, but isn't that just some ice and water? Well, one thing about Hypixel is that cacti actually doesn't make any money. It's the cactus green that does, and I know it doesn't seem like it changes a lot, but it does. And the difference is like a night and day. Why? Well, assuming you are building cactus farm for money, which is the reason in 99% of the cases, you have to also collect, smelt, store it somewhere and then take it out of that somewhere, which takes ages for any respectful size of farm and entirely misses the point of building an automatic farm in the first place. But there comes me with a very revolutionary idea. Okay, but what if we also disband the cactus green so we don't have to collect it manually? Pretty simple, right? Well, not really. No, and I could start listing all the things working to our disadvantage, but way easier would be to list all the things that doesn't work to our disadvantage, because I don't have to say anything. Literally nothing is not working to our disadvantage. Nevertheless, I decided to proceed. It wasn't easy, nor obvious, but after countless tries and with some miracle, I found the design dumb enough to actually work. It was great. I say more, the farm was working exactly as I imagined it to work, making maximum amount of profits with least effort possible. It just doesn't get more great than that. You can say it was the greatest, which I obviously didn't fail to share with the entire world. It's probably the last thing you should do, but I knew that. What I didn't know is that the video is going to kind of blow up, out of nowhere reaching 100,000 views in just about 2 weeks, and suddenly there were quite a lot of people building their own farm. I never encouraged anyone to doing so. In fact, I was a bit skeptical, what if admins decided to patch it at some point and all that time they will spend will be wasted. Well, I didn't have anything to back up my concerns, and even if I did, it would probably be seen as me trying to discourage people from building the farm in order to maximize my own profits, which, I'm not gonna lie, would be a smart move, just not in my style, so I just didn't say anything. Which turned out to be a good call, because to my surprise, actually nothing happened. I mean, months has passed, everything seemed to be working fine, so dozens of people have built their own farm, and like in a Disney movie, everyone lived happily ever after. Oh no, wait, about 8 months later, bam, admins patched the farm. What? Do you realize it has been 8 months? If you're going to patch the farm, just maybe you should have done it then, before dozens of people would spend hundreds of hours building the farm. But anyway, so what I did is first I made cacti no longer stack, significantly reducing the efficiency of the farm. It was annoying, but the farm was still working, so there was no chance I'm gonna do something about it. Next patch hit much harder, by making comparators count towards the redstone limit and therefore shutting down the whole collection system. It was slightly less good because the farm wasn't working anymore, but before I had any time to figure out what to do with it, there came the third patch, introducing entity limit, which combined with the cacti no longer stacking and therefore generating a lot more entities than it otherwise would, shut down pretty much entire farm. So, is that it? Does it mean the end of the cactus farm? I don't know, maybe not. What I do know is that the farm I have is so freaking massive that it will take ages just to implement any change. What's worse, the Hypixel environment is so unpredictable that it's almost impossible to tell whether the change is gonna work or not before building the whole thing. What I'm trying to say that at this point it's pretty much a gamble. Will I spend 5 hours and end up with a working collection system, or will I spend 50 hours with no solution inside? And besides, the price of the cacti dropped so much since I released that video that the main question is it even worth it at this point? I mean, it was a fun little project, but everything has to come to an end, you know? And I think it's important to recognize that so that we don't get stuck looking behind, but rather keep looking forward, seeking for... Yeah, so I decided to fix the farm. But first, for those of you out of the loop, really simplified about why Cactus Farm on Hypixel was always kinda doomed to fail. So Hypixel is a network which is basically a bunch of computers processing bunch of information. The biggest game mode on Hypixel is Skyblock, often crossing 30,000 concurrent players. It wouldn't be really possible to process that many information by one server, so to make it simple, Skyblock got divided into a bunch of mini servers with on average 20 players playing on each of them. with one exception. Personal Island. Upon entering Personal Island, you also create a mini server with your own mini world to play on, except now usually there is only one player playing on it, and assuming each of those 20 players would do the same, instead of 20 people playing in one world, you have 20 worlds with one player in each of them, and let's say half of the 30,000 people would do the same, and suddenly that's a lot of worlds with a lot of information to process. The solution? Well, more computers to process more information, making it harder and more costly to maintain. Or you could just, cut down on a healthy dose of those information that are useless most of the time anyway. Like, for example, item on the ground is an entity with an entire set of information about itself. In vanilla Minecraft they stay like that for 5 minutes, so admins were like, nah, that's way too long, who needs it anyway? Actually, that would be me. Hey yo, come back, where are you? And so they reduce item test from time like tenfold. Although it's been a while since I was testing all that stuff, so we'll just make sure my information is up to date. This is where I started, with a bunch of tests. Well, first of all, item test from time is 30 seconds, which is absolutely terrible, but same as last time. Next, item in water still seem to move way slower outside of the 16 block area around you, which together with the 30-second despawn time mean the maximum distance items can travel in water is 15 blocks. And I know it may seem weird, but that's surprisingly good. I mean, it used to be like 8, so yeah, I'm happy with that. Next, redstone is still being limited to about 100 redstone pieces working at half the rate of the hopper. The only difference is that now comparators also count towards the limit, which wasn't the case before and which I didn't fail to abuse. And the last thing important to us at the moment is the amount of hoppers you can place. I mean, there was never really a limit, but after placing about 1000, most of them would just stop working, so technically that was the limit. So to test it out, I simply placed 1000 hoppers. And nothing happened. I mean, they were still working fine. So I placed another 1000. Still nothing. I got about 4000 when I realized how long it will take me to break them, so I just stopped there. But the most important thing, they were still working fine. At this point I was slowly getting my hopes up that maybe they created some special no-lag hoppers and there is no limit, and I don't think you realize how amazing that would be. I mean, it would fix everything. Sad thing about things too good to be true is that usually they are not true. And later on I found out that while they fix hopper lagging, now there is a limit of about 10,000 tile entities, which is still great. I mean, it fixes 2 out of the 3 problems, and doing simple math, it leaves us with only 1 problem to fix. It just happened to be the worst one. Entity limit. So from my rough estimation, the limit is about 1000 items dropped on the ground at the same time. Well, my farm is producing about 133 cacti per second, which means it will hit the limit within 7.5 seconds. Or in other words, each cacti has on average 7.5 seconds to reach the hopper. And to put that into perspective, it takes about 9 seconds for a cacti just to fall from the highest floor, and then another 2 for each block traveled in water. And the problem is that there isn't much I can do about it other than making the farm smaller. I mean, 7.5 seconds is an average, which is usually smaller than the absolutely highest value you can get, which means I could still try to place all the hoppers hoping it will work somehow. But come on, I'm not gonna place a few thousand hoppers hoping it will work somehow. And I didn't, believe me or not, but I actually tried to calculate the most optimal way to place all the hoppers by calculating the average horizontal and vertical velocity of the items to determine whether it's better to reduce the horizontal travel time by placing hoppers as dense as possible, or to reduce the vertical travel time by making second collection system with the same density of the hoppers at half the height. But did you know that in Minecraft items are not falling at constant speed? They are accelerating, but the best part is that they are not even accelerating at constant rate. The higher speed the item have, the lower is its acceleration. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's an air resistance formula. Did you know there is a freaking air resistance in Minecraft? I mean, wasn't the whole point of education system to don't account for air resistance? How am I supposed to calculate the average velocity now? I mean, technically there is other way, which is to measure fall time from every single floor, add them all up and divide by number of floors. Okay, so I just placed a few thousand hoppers hoping it will work somehow. Of course, by the time I finished placing all the hoppers I placed first had already filled up, so I couldn't tell whether it's gonna work or not yet. First, I needed a collection system, and I'm not gonna lie, I used to think this is gonna be the hardest part. But thanks to the fact this time we actually can use hoppers makes it much easier, because instead of distributing redstone across the whole farm, I could just use hoppers to bring all cacti in one spot and then, I don't know, figure out something. Which is what I would probably do if I didn't visit a player called Daladir. Daladir, I hope that's how you pronounce that. To put that into context, Daladir is a technical skyblock player that recently designed a collection system for a cactus farm. Well, recently, that is to that message, not to now. In any case, he offered some help. At this point I was still struggling with the entity limit, and unfortunately for me his farm was a bit smaller, so the entity limit wasn't as much of a problem for him, but I was still curious to see his idea for the redstone part, so I decided to take a look. And the first thing I noticed was a lot of redstone. But not a whole lot redstone limit being used. It took me a couple of seconds to figure out what's going on, and let me tell you, it's genius. I mean, like I said, it doesn't change a whole lot in our situation, but nevertheless makes everything a lot simpler. Plus, it's quite interesting, assuming you are not some kind of redstone genius, because, well, as you're gonna see, I'm certainly not. So far I used to think about redstone in 0-1 system. It's either on or off, and well, that's not entirely true. Some of the redstone components can be powered with a different signal strength, starting from 1 all the way to 15. For example, redstone dust has a different signal strength depending how far is it from the source, and what Daladir has discovered is that Hypixel redstone limit is triggered only when a redstone component is being switched on and off, but not when you change the strength of the signal. You can change the strength however you want, and in eyes of Hypixel, the redstone is still being powered, so the limit isn't triggered, which can be used in a very clever way. Okay, so the same situation as before, redstone dust with a signal strength from 15 to 1 and a dispenser. To activate the dispenser, redstone dust next to it has to be switched off and on. You can do that by switching off and on the main power source, and therefore switching off and on all redstone dust, triggering 15 actions towards the redstone limit, which isn't exactly good. But what you can do instead is to subtract signal strength of 1 from all redstone dust using the subtract mode in comparator, leaving us with 14 redstone dust being still powered but with slightly less strength, and 1 redstone dust that originally had a signal strength of 1 being switched off, triggering only 1 activation towards the redstone limit in the exact location where we need it. This was exactly what Daladir had in mind with his design. Using that knowledge, I built my own, a bit simpler design, but the idea is exactly the same. In a nutshell, what is happening here is that torch gives a signal strength of 15 to this comparator. This chest with a 25 stacks of items inside is subtracting signal strength of 13, leaving us with a signal strength of 2. Next, there is 1 item in those hoppers going back and forth, subtracting either 1 when item is in this hopper or 0 when item is in the other hopper, leaving us with either signal strength of 2 when item is in the other hopper or signal strength of 1 when item is in this hopper, switching on and off only that 1 redstone dust in a place where we need it. And lastly, because another property of comparator is passing on the same signal strength as it gets, you can easily deliver the same 1-to-1-2 signal wherever you want with a simple comparator line that isn't triggering redstone limit, because comparators are always on. They are just changing their signal strength, which, as we established, doesn't trigger the limit. As you can see, very simple and clever solution. Well, the last thing I had to do was to distribute hyper furnaces. In short, it's a custom item that instantly smelt items, except in practice it can smelt only as fast as items gets delivered to it, which is essentially efficiency of the hopper. So using that number and efficiency of the farm, I roughly estimated the amount of furnaces to cover the whole farm and rounded it up to make sure it won't be a bottleneck, while also making sure there won't be too many furnaces, because after all they still need the fuel, which is almost nothing in cost compared to profits from the farm, but after all they still need to be restocked, which is almost nothing compared to how long 1 chest of coal blocks can last. But okay, I'm just lazy, leave me alone. Ultimately, I went with 3 furnaces over 4 hopper lines, which makes things a bit more complicated than I would like, but I will do anything for that tiny bit of less effort. And so, with that being done, and after a few final checks and tweaks, the moment of truth has come. And it didn't work. Before I reached for my last resort, which would be to go cry in the corner, I checked the whole farm one more time, hoping to find, I don't know, anything at this point. And thank god this whole thing was caused by just some cacti glitching out of the farm, which I easily fixed by adding a few more layers of ice at the bottom, but that just shows you how perfect it had to be when just a few items on the ground make all the difference. And indeed, soon enough, the messages about the end the limit has stopped. I didn't put much emphasis on it, so it may not seem like a big deal, but it was. Not only because it meant the farm was fully working, but because for months this was the only thing I could see whenever I joined my island. This red text repeated over and over, screaming right into my face. But now, it's gone. And even though it wasn't making any sound, suddenly everything just went quiet. I can't really explain it, but at that moment it felt nice. But that's not the end of the story. Well, as you can imagine, the patch not only affected my farm, but pretty much every single farm on Hypixel. And usually drastically reduced supply means drastically higher prices. And it was no different this time, with prices hitting all-time high, and the same farm that used to make 50 mil a day was suddenly just shy of 130 million coins per day by doing nothing. Like, literally nothing. I mean, collecting drops from minions, which is considered to be a passive money-making method, takes infinitely more effort than using this farm. Of course, this video will cause the prices to go back down. I mean, they already kinda did due to people figuring out their own solutions or by just doing /visit something LT. Yeah, this video was meant to be released a while ago, but in any case, this was Rise, Fall, and a skyrocket of the greatest farm on Hypixel. Or that's what I thought, because after one of the recent updates the messages came back. At first I thought they further reduced maximum amount of items on the ground, but this is a weird one, because when I tried to find the exact amount I had more than 1700 stacks of items on the ground without triggering the limit. Meanwhile, when I joined my island the messages start to pop up after like 5 seconds, which would suggest cacti working at more than 120% of the maximum efficiency in a perfect environment, which is literally impossible unless higher tick rate, so yeah, I don't know. I found out about this after the video was already done, which put me in a weird spot where I wasn't sure what to do about it. Well, as you can see, ultimately I still decided to upload it, since for a majority of people watching it for content, this doesn't change anything. And if you're a fellow Cactus farm user, well, I'm currently trying to contact someone who will know if it's on purpose or what's happening, because if it is on purpose, then I'd like to talk.